Everyone. So let's talk about an example of creative destruction here. When I was a child, I remember, there was a Christmas, and I remember like opening them all these presents under the tree, and I was a pretty little kid. And I remember opening one, and it was like a VHS tape, right? Like for a VCR. And I remember like going to my mom and being like, "Why did you get us this?" Because we didn't have a VCR when I was a really little kid. "Why did you get us this?" And my mom was like, "Oh, it's a book I thought you would like." And I was like, I totally fell for it. I was like, "You're so dumb. This is not a book. This is a videotape for a VCR that we don't have, right?" Like I totally was like, thought I was smarter than my parents or whatever at like 4 years old. And my mom was like, "Oh, what's that?" And then like from the corner of the living room, they pull out this last present, and it was like a VCR. My brother and I are like, we jump up and we're doing the like spinning in circles happy dance because we got a VCR and we didn't have one. And we were so excited. And so anyways, when I was a child and we wanted to rent a movie, we'd go to this place called Video Library, which was this little mom and pop, like little, video store near my house. And at Video Library, you'd walk in and they had these like, movies on the shelves, and they had these little tokens that you had to take off like this hook, and you had to bring up, and then they would bring out the tape for you to rent, right? Now at Video Library, they had like when a new movie would come out, Video Library would have like three or maybe four copies of it, not very many, right? So if a new movie came out and you wanted to see it on your VCR, and you went to Video Library to rent the movie, you like a lot of times they wouldn't be there, and so they'd be like, "Well, do you want to put your name on the list?" And they had like these clipboards for like every popular movie. And I'd be like, yeah, I want to put my name on the clipboard. So like they'd give us the clipboard, we put our name and our phone number there, and then they would go down the clipboard every time that movie got returned to the store. So like if it was like a popular movie that just came out and you put your name on the clipboard, a lot of times it would be like 3 or 4 weeks later that we would get a phone call, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, this is Jeff from Video Library. The movie that you wanted, Jurassic Park, just came in, and if you want it, you need to call us or come get it today. After today, it goes to the next person on the list, blah blah blah," right? So that was how most video rental places operated in the late 80s and early 90s, was that they had a few copies of every movie, and if you wanted something really popular, you had to wait a while to get it. But they had these really big selections of lots of movies. It was just, you probably weren't getting anything new and good. um, so anyways, Blockbuster comes along, right? Blockbuster has this great idea, right? Their idea is when a new movie comes out, they want you to be able to see it within a week, right? The big Hollywood movies, they want you to be able to see the blockbusters, thus the name, right? So when Blockbuster comes along, they have this new business model, right? So they start popping up all over the United States. And at Blockbuster, when a new movie came out, they would have 30 or 40 copies instead of three or four. So that you could walk into a Blockbuster, and if they didn't have that new movie when you walked in, they would have it within a few days for you. So you put your name on the list at Blockbuster, you're getting it way faster than you are at Video Library. Now, my parents were like, we got to keep supporting the local business, and we're going to keep going to Video Library, and Video Library has taken care of us. We're going to take care of like that was kind of my parents, attitude towards Blockbuster. But there was no competition there. That Blockbuster wiped them out. And again, this is the invisible hand. That really quickly, what happened was Video Library, within a couple of years of Blockbuster coming to my neighborhood, Video Library goes out of business, right? And nobody had to decide, nobody had to kind of make that happen. Nobody had to come along and say, "You're better, you're worse, so you go away and you get to get bigger." That's what happens automatically in the free market with the invisible hand. That as customers start deciding that Blockbuster provides them more utility than Video Library, customers start switching to Blockbuster. And Video Library, without customers, right, they're not making profit. They have to start giving up some of their resources. Maybe they lay off workers. Maybe they move to a smaller storefront, right? That's giving up resources that they previously had been using. And then ultimately, Video Library goes out of business, right? And Blockbuster is the only video store in my neighborhood. And again, It's because Blockbuster was providing more utility to people at the same price. That you could rent a video from Blockbuster or Video Library, it was the same price at either one. In fact, Blockbuster might have even been a little bit cheaper. And again, with more utility, because you're going to get the newer movies, the bigger movies sooner at Blockbuster, right? So Video Library goes out of business, Blockbuster continues to grow. They start popping up more and more and more all over the United States, right? And at a certain point, at maybe like 1997, 1998, Blockbuster, one of the biggest companies in the United States, right? One of the fastest growing companies in the United States, putting Blockbuster videos everywhere, right? And then what happened, right? Well, first, Redbox comes along. And Redbox is like, we can do the same thing as you, Blockbuster, but we can do it with a lot less resources. Redbox was like, we could just set up a kiosk in front of a 7-Eleven. We can fill it with 30 or 40 copies of the newest movie. So just like Blockbuster has the newest movies, Redbox would have the newest movies as well. In fact, Redbox would only have the newest movies when it started, right? But the difference was Redbox didn't need a store. They didn't need people to sit there and, they didn't need employees to manage it the whole time. They just need somebody to drive by the Redbox once a week and swap in the new movies and whatever, right? Service the machine. But it's way fewer resources than a whole big store with employees and everything, right? Redbox was like, minimal resources needed. So Redbox can provide you with almost the same or maybe even more utility than Blockbuster, but they use way less resources. So what do? They charged a way less price. Blockbuster would charge $4 to rent a movie. Like when I was in, high school, Redbox would charge 99 cents to rent that movie. Redbox way better, right, than Blockbuster because they're providing you with almost the same utility, not quite the same selection as Blockbuster. So if you wanted an old movie, Redbox wouldn't really work. But if you wanted something recent, Redbox would give you, you're just as likely to find it there as you would at Blockbuster, but 99 cents instead of $4. So the utility per dollar way higher at Redbox, right? So what happens? Customers stop going to Blockbuster. Blockbuster stops making a profit. Blockbuster has to start laying off employees. Blockbuster has to start closing stores. And again, as an economist, this is a good thing. It's painful. That's why we call it creative destruction. But Redbox is doing the same thing with way less resources. That's awesome because that means all of the leftover resources can go to, who knows, something else to provide even more utility to society. Now, then eventually Netflix comes along and just absolutely destroys Blockbuster because you can go and you can pay a flat fee to watch as many movies as you want, and you don't have to leave your house to go get it. Going to Blockbuster and renting the movie, that sucked. The worst part was after you watched the movie, you had to bring it back. And Blockbuster, they gave you 3 days, right? And they did that on purpose because they knew you're going to watch it the first day. They knew that after you watch the movie, you're not going to feel like getting up and returning that movie to the store. So you're going to wait till the next day. And on the next day, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I got one more day. I'm not going to do that today. And then on the third day, you would forget and Blockbuster would charge you a $4 late fee, right? That's how they made most of their money, right? Maybe not most of their money, but that's how they made a significant portion of their money was through late fees. Well, you know what? That doesn't give anybody utility. It doesn't make anybody feel happy, right? There's a few people who maybe wanted to keep their movies longer, and so they liked that they could just keep it and automatically get charged for it, but almost everyone hated those late fees, right? Well, with Netflix, that disappears. Now, think about this though. What are the resources that Netflix needs, right? Do they need stores? No. Do they need labor, right? Like unskilled labor, right? 20 years ago, if you were a high school student, you could get a job at Blockbuster. No skills needed. You just had to run a cash register and know how to operate a vacuum and be able to put things on shelves, matching names of movies to their pictures. Those are all the skills you needed to work at a Blockbuster 25 years ago, 20 years ago. So what does Netflix need, right? Netflix needs bandwidth. Netflix needs computer programmers to, coders for their website. Netflix creates content these days. They're looking for actors and directors. Blockbuster never hired any actors or directors or anything like that. So what you see is Blockbuster and Netflix have very, very different resources that they use. So part of that invisible hand is like, hey, if you know that store that used to be a Blockbuster, it's not a Netflix store. It's something else. Now, what did it become? This is where the invisible hand is so awesome. That store got rented out by whoever thought they could make the most money out of that store, right? Maybe it's a CrossFit gym now, right? Because 25 years ago, CrossFit wasn't a thing. But now it's a thing and it uses resources to be a thing, and it had to get those resources somewhere. So maybe the storefront that it's in used to be a Blockbuster. Right? Maybe another Blockbuster got turned into a 99-cent store, because there's a lot more of those today than there were 25 years ago. The idea is we don't really know, but the invisible hand is moving those resources from place to place. And again, moving them from places where there's not a lot of utility, not as much utility being produced. Blockbuster doesn't produce as much utility as Redbox or Netflix. That's why it started dying out. And those resources got moved other places, who knows where, right? But the theory is, right, Netflix provides more utility with fewer resources. So the leftover resources get to move wherever else in society they're valued most to provide even more utility for all of us. So that in the end, the amount of utility being produced should be growing and growing and growing and growing, so that our standard of living, right, what we experience in that market economy should be getting better and better and better and better. All right. So that's the theory of creative destruction and the invisible hand of the marketplace. See you guys.